I want you to close your eyes for a second and just picture the South China Sea.
But not the sea you're probably picturing right now.
Right, exactly. Forget the massive container ships stacked with electronics. Forget the luxury cruises docking over at Ocean Terminal.
We are going way back, early 19th century.
Yeah. I want you to imagine a lawless maritime frontier. It is basically the Wild West, but on the water. And ruling over all this chaos isn't an emperor sitting in the Forbidden City in Beijing.
No, definitely not.
It's a guy who actually started out as a fisherman's kid. We are talking about Cheung Po Tsai.
It is a name that it comes up constantly in Hong Kong history, doesn't it?
Oh, all the time.
But usually he is really reduced to a caricature. You know, you see him as the pirate king on tourist brochures with the eye patch and the sword.
And that is exactly why I wanted to open this specific file today. So we have this research file titled Maritime Frontier and Power Reconstruction.
Which, I have to admit, sounds a bit dry.
It sounds very academic. But when you actually dig into these archives, I mean, it reads like a thriller.
It really does.
Because we aren't talking about a guy with a parrot and a wooden leg.
Right.
We are talking about a commander of 50,000 people.
And 600 ships.
That is just wild to me.
To put that in perspective for you, that is larger than the navy of many sovereign nations at the time. It wasn't just a gang, it was a floating city-state.
And his career trajectory is just insane. He goes from being a kidnapped teenager to a pirate lord, and then eventually becomes a high-ranking government official.
Right.
So the mission for this deep dive is to move past all those myths. You know, like that famous cave everyone always visits. We are going to unpack 5 specific historical stories from these archives to figure out how this guy actually operated.
Because the big question is, how do you manage 50,000 outlaws? And how do you survive being constantly squeezed between the Qing dynasty and the European colonial powers?
Precisely. And for anyone listening who might be visiting Hong Kong, or maybe you already live there, we are going to ground this. We're going to connect each history lesson to a specific hidden gem on Cheung Chau Island.
Because Cheung Chau wasn't just a fishing village back then, it was his main logistics hub.
It was the safe harbor for the entire red flag fleet.
Exactly.
So let's just get right into it. Story number 1. The biggest question I had when I was reading this file was the management aspect.
The logistics of it all.
Yeah, you have 50,000 pirates. These are not corporate employees with 401ks and an HR department.
Far from it.
They are rowdy, violent people. You don't have a police force. So how on earth do you control them without a mutiny every Tuesday?
Well, the research calls this management via superstition, but a more concrete term, and one I actually really love, is the God Tower ship.
The God Tower ship. I mean, it sounds like a boss level in a video game.
It does, doesn't it? But it was a very real, very effective tool. See, the Red Flag Fleet didn't just carry cannons and gunpowder. They dedicated a massive vessel solely to deities like Tin Hao, the goddess of the sea.
A floating temple.
Exactly, a floating temple right in the middle of the fleet.
So is it just for morale? Like a mobile church to make the men feel good?
It was much, much more calculated than that. It was effectively a mobile court of law. Cheung Po Tsai hired professional Taoist priests to live on this ship.
Okay.
And here's the sheer brilliance of it, or the manipulation, depending on how you look at it. Before any major battle, or if there was a dispute over how to distribute loot, he wouldn't just give an order as the captain.
What would he do?
He would hold a divination ritual.
Oh, I think I see the play here.
Yeah.
If he gives an order, it's just one man telling another man what to do. And that can be challenged, especially among pirates who naturally value freedom and rebellion.
You hit the nail on the head, but if the goddess gives the order, that is absolute. And the archives suggest it was often a completely rigged game. Cheung would secretly agree on the strategy with the priests beforehand in private.
Of course he would.
Then he'd gather the fleet, burn the incense, do the whole performance, and the priests would announce the plan as a divine decree.
That is genius. It completely externalizes the authority. If you disagree with Cheung Po Tsai, you're just insubordinate. But if you disagree with the ritual...
You're cursed. You are arguing with fate itself. And the discipline they enforced was brutal.
I can imagine.
The archives mention that things like desertion or, and this was a huge one, assaulting women during raids, were punishable by immediate execution.
Wow. So he had strict rules of engagement.
Very strict. But often, lesser punishments, like cutting off a guy's ears for desertion, were done right in front of the statues on the god ship. So it was seen as divinely ordained punishment.
It effectively created a legal system in a place where the emperor's laws just didn't reach. It's fascinating because it shows he wasn't just a thug, he was a real political architect.
He absolutely was.
Now, if we are walking around Cheung Chau today, where do we see the physical evidence of this strategy?
You need to go to the Saiwan Tenhou Temple.
Oh, I know the one. It's right down by the water. Looks quite peaceful. Very scenic.
It is very scenic today, but when you visit, you shouldn't just look at the architecture. The research suggests this temple likely served as a shore-based version of that god ship.
Really?
Yes, it was a listening post for his subordinates and a physical place on land to enforce that spiritual hierarchy.
So standing there isn't just visiting a place of worship. You're basically standing in his command center.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And there's an even deeper legacy here. We all know the Cheung Chau Bun Festival, right?
Yeah, the giant towers of buns, people scrambling up them to grab the plastic buns.
Yeah.
It's all about peace and health, isn't it?
Well, that is the modern interpretation.
Yeah.
But originally, the roots of that festival are actually about appeasing sea ghosts and the spirits of those who died in these massive pirate wars.
No way.
Yes. It's directly connected to that exact need to manage the spiritual world that Cheung Po Tsai mastered.
That puts a completely different spin on the festival for me. It's not just quirky folklore. It's like the lingering trauma of a naval war.
Exactly.
Okay, moving on to story number 2. We've got the management down. But what about warfare? Because the stereotype is that pirates are just brute force. You know, attack, burn, loot, drink rum. Was he just a sledgehammer?
Not at all. And this is where the file gets really, really interesting. Story number 2 is about the art of the fake retreat. It's actually a total masterclass in public relations.
Pirate PR. I love that concept. Managing the pirate brand.
It's exactly that. So this story takes place at a spot called Kaolian, which is near Jiangmen, but it's really central to understanding the whole Cheung Chau legend.
Okay, set the scene.
Basically, the Red Flag Fleet wanted to attack this village. But the villagers fought back hard. They had heavy cannons, a well-organized militia. Cheung Po Tsai quickly realized he couldn't win without losing a devastating number of ships.
Right, and usually a pirate leader in that position has 2 really bad choices. You either retreat and look weak, which encourages a mutiny, or you attack and lose half your men, which destroys your power anyway.
Correct. Losing face is incredibly dangerous for a pirate king. But Cheung found the third option.
What do you do?
He learned that the village worshipped the Hongsheng god. So instead of admitting he was being beaten by a bunch of local villagers, he made this famous declaration. He stood up and said, "I fear not the people of Kaolian, but the god of Kaolian."
Wow. It's not you, it's your god. That is incredibly slick.
Isn't it? He literally burned incense to their god, bowed, and ordered a retreat. And during the retreat, one of his ships actually sank, creating a sandbar that is still known today as Tacheng Sand.
So he takes a military defeat and completely spins it into a story about his own piety.
And it worked beautifully. It branded him as a righteous pirate, sort of a Robin Hood figure rather than a bloodthirsty butcher.
That's fascinating.
And this was crucial for his operations on Cheung Chau because he needed the locals there to like him. He needed supplies, fresh water, food. By acting like he respected the local gods, the locals felt much safer supporting him.
It totally changes the narrative from predator to protector. Okay, so what's the hidden gem for this one?
Yeah.
Please don't tell me it's that sandbar in Jiangmen. We want something you can see on Cheung Chau.
No. For this one, we have to talk about the Cheung Po Tsai cave on Cheung Chau.
Okay, I have to be honest with you here.
Yeah.
I have been to the cave.
Ian.
It is entirely underwhelming.
It really is.
It's just this small, dark hole in the rocks. You see all these tourists go there, they wait in the heat, squeeze through this tiny gap, and come out saying, "That's it. Where's the pirate treasure?"
Physically, yes, it's a bit of a tourist trap, but again, context is everything. The research points out that while the cave is small, it actually perfectly symbolizes his elusiveness.
How so?
If you connect it to the Tacheng Sand story we just talked about, the cave isn't meant to be a palace, it's a bolt hole. It represents his incredible ability to disappear, to use the natural landscape, and to spin a narrative that he's everywhere and nowhere all at once.
I see. So when you are squeezing through that dark tunnel with your phone flashlight hitting your head on the rock, you aren't looking at his living room. You're physically experiencing that art of the retreat.
Exactly. You're experiencing the guerrilla warfare aspect of his life. He survived because he knew exactly how to hide and how to use geography to his advantage.
That actually makes me want to go back and see it again with that mindset. It makes it way cooler.
It changes the whole experience.
All right, let's get to story number 3. Because this is the one that felt the most, complicated in the reading. the Triangle family.
Oh, this is definitely the most Game of Thrones part of the research. It deals directly with the power structure of the fleet and how they managed to hold it together.
So let's cast the characters for everyone listening. We have Cheung Po Tsai, we have the original pirate lord Zheng, and we have his wife, the very famous Zheng, who is also known as Qing Shi.
Right. So Cheung Po Tsai actually started out as their adopted son.
Right.
Zheng captured him when he was just a teenager, really liked his smarts, and officially adopted him into the succession line of the pirate fleet. But after Zheng died, things got unconventional.
Unconventional is a very polite way to put it. The file says the adopted son formed a partnership and eventually an actual marriage with his adoptive mother, Zheng Sao.
Yes, they got married.
I have to ask, in the early 1800s, in Qing Dynasty China, wouldn't that be a massive, unforgivable scandal?
In traditional Confucian land society, absolutely. It would be considered incestuous, highly immoral, and completely illegal. It broke literally every rule in the book.
So how did they get away with it?
Well, the expert analysis in the file emphasizes that we really have to look at this through Tanka eyes. The Tanka are the boat people culture.
And how is the Tanka view different from the mainland view?
It was intensely pragmatic. This was what you'd call a functional marriage. Think about the massive power vacuum when Zheng Yi died. Zheng Yi Sao was this brilliant administrator. She handled the laws, the business side, the complex alliances.
That's as the CEO.
Exactly. And Cheung Po Tsai was the charismatic general out on the front lines who the actual fighting men respected.
So if those two don't align, the fleet splits.
Exactly. You get a massive civil war on the water. The marriage kept the leadership intact. It was basically a corporate merger sealed with a wedding ring.
That makes perfect sense.
And to sell this controversial union to their people, they donated heavily to local temples.
Ah, so they were buying legitimacy.
Essentially, yes. Which brings us perfectly to our next hidden gem.
The Yukui Temple,
Yeah,
also known as the Pak Tai Temple.
that's the one.
It's the big one with the basketball court right in front of it. It's got those really cool green tiles on the roof.
I know it very well. Inside that temple, there are actual antiques, specifically an iron sword and some very old ceremonial items that are rumored to be direct donations from the pirate fleet.
Really?
Yes. So when you look at them, you should think about the unconventional family unit that funded them. They're essentially using that temple to say, look, we might be breaking Confucian land rules, but the gods still accept our money, so they must accept us.
It's a total defiance of mainland social norms. Just solidified in architecture. It's a statement that the rules of the land simply do not apply on the water.
Beautifully put.
Okay, story number 4. We've seen the politics, the PR, the crazy family drama. Now I want the action. Talk to me about the Battle of Chek Kok.
This is the blockbuster movie moment of the file.
Right.
1809. This is the absolute climax of his pirate career.
Set the scene for us.
It was a massive international conflict. You had the Qing Dynasty Navy who were just desperate at this point because they kept losing to these pirates. So they swallowed their pride and teamed up with the Portuguese Navy from Macau to trap them.
So the Empire strikes back, and they bring friends.
Exactly. And they successfully trapped Cheung Po Tsai right off the coast of what is now the Hong Kong airport.
Chek Kok.
Right. We are talking 60,000 men involved in this standoff. The Portuguese brought these massive ships with heavy cannons. They had vastly superior firepower. The pirates had the numbers, but their tech was much weaker.
So it's a huge technological mismatch. How did Cheung survive that?
He used asymmetric warfare. The research describes these bee swarm tactics. He used hundreds of small, fast boats to harass the big ships.
Okay.
He deliberately lured them into shallow waters where the heavy European galleons couldn't go without running aground. And of course, he used fire ships.
Sending burning boats drifting into the enemy fleet, that is a classic naval tactic.
A classic for a reason. He even sent a letter to the Portuguese commander Pinto, trying to bribe him to split the alliance.
He was trying everything.
He was working every single angle, military, diplomatic, environmental, but eventually the fleet was completely blockaded. It really looked like the end. 9 days of siege.
But he gets out. How?
He waited. He knew the weather patterns of the Pearl River Delta far better than the Europeans did. He just waited for a heavy fog and a sudden shift in wind direction. And under the cover of that thick fog, the entire pirate fleet slipped right out of the net.
That is incredible. A total phantom move. So where do we go to see this battlefield today?
You go to the lookout pavilions on Cheung Chau, facing north, looking straight towards Chek Kok, where the planes are landing today.
Literally the modern airport.
Literally the airport.
Yeah.
When you stand there and see a massive commercial plane landing, Look at that stretch of water beneath it. That is the ghost battlefield. That exact spot is where the largest naval battle in Hong Kong's history took place.
That honestly gives me chills. Just imagining 600 burning ships fighting for survival, right where a 747 is touching down right now. It's like a powerful juxtaposition of the old trade routes and the new ones.
It really highlights how strategic that specific patch of water has always been. It was the gateway to China then, and it's the gateway now.
Okay, story number 5. The aftermath. We know he escapes the battle, and eventually he surrenders in 1810. We know he became a government official. So did he live happily ever after?
Unfortunately, no. This is actually the most tragic part of the file. We call this the glass ceiling.
Or maybe the class ceiling?
That is probably much more accurate. So he surrendered and was given an official rank 2B or 3, making him a naval officer. And he was really good at it, too.
Well, he knew the waters.
Exactly. He hunted down other pirates for the government. He used all his insider knowledge. But eventually he hit a hard wall.
Who was the wall?
The elite, educated officials, specifically a man named Lin Zexu.
Wait, Lin Zexu, the guy who is famous for suppressing the opium trade? He's a national hero in all the history books.
This is the very same man, but in the specific story, he plays the antagonist. Lin Zexu wrote a formal petition arguing that Cheung Po Tsai should basically be frozen in his career.
Why? Just because he didn't trust a former pirate?
Partly that. But the language he used was explicitly about class. Lin argued that it was deeply insulting to proper, educated officials to have a fisherman's kid, a tanka person, rising through the ranks. He said it disrupted the natural social order.
It is so harsh. It didn't matter how good he was at his job. He just had the wrong background.
And the petition worked. Cheung Po Tsai was transferred to Penghu, which is an island in Taiwan, to basically die in isolation. He was kept far away from the command centers, far away from his home waters, and he died there at only 36.
36. That is incredibly young.
The research says his death was likely from illness, but heavily exacerbated by depression and that severe ostracization. He conquered the sea, but he just couldn't conquer the snobbery of the land.
Man. And that brings us to the final hidden gem from the file, the Cheung Chau boundary stones.
Yes, you can find them near St. John's Hospital on the island.
Right. Now, historically, I know these are later colonial markers, right? They're used for dividing the British and local areas. But the expert analysis in our file connects them to this broader theme of segregation.
They serve as a powerful symbol. Just as Lin Zexu segregated the pirate king based on class, these stones marked later divides on his home island. They represent the insider versus outsider dynamic that completely defined Cheung Po Tsai's tragedy.
He was the ultimate outsider trying to get in.
And the system crushed him for it.
That is heavy. But it really ties it all together beautifully. It stops being just a fun adventure story and becomes this deep social commentary. So when we look back at these 5 stories, the godship, the fake retreat, the marriage, the battle, and that tragic end, what is the big picture here? What are you supposed to take away from this file?
I think the file lays out 3 distinct patterns. First is faith as politics. We saw that with the godship and the touching sand story. Religion wasn't just about personal belief. It was the actual chain of command. It was the software that ran the pirate hardware.
Right. It was their entire governance model.
The second pattern is the class divide. The story proves that competence, even outright brilliance, couldn't overcome the deeply ingrained social prejudices of the time, the elite versus the tenka.
And the third pattern?
The sovereignty vacuum. Cheung Chau existed in a gap. It was caught between the Qing Empire and Western powers. And that specific gap allowed this pirate republic to flourish. It really shows how unique Hong Kong's position has always been, sitting right on the edge of empires.
It really makes you rethink the whole pirate label. He was less of a pirate and more like a warlord or a statesman who just didn't have a country.
Absolutely. He was building a state at sea because the land wouldn't have him.
So before we wrap this up, leave us with something to chew on. A final thought from the research.
Well, there is this incredibly provocative what-if scenario that the researchers alluded to. We know the Opium Wars happened just a few decades after Cheung Po Tsai died, right?
Right.
And the Qing Navy was absolutely decimated by the British because they were technologically behind and tactically rigid.
Yeah, they were bringing wooden junks to a modern gunbutt fight.
Exactly. So ask yourself this. What if the Qing dynasty had embraced Cheung Po Tsai? What if, instead of discriminating against him and the Red Flag Fleet because of their class, they had fully integrated their naval expertise?
Oh, wow. I see where you're going.
Remember, These pirates were already adopting Western weapons. They deeply understood asymmetric warfare. They knew how to fight the Europeans far better than the traditional generals up in Beijing did.
So if Lin Zexu hadn't been so prejudiced,
Would the Opium Wars have ended differently if the pirate king had been given the keys to the coastal defense?
that is a massive historical pivot point. It's crazy to think that class snobbery might have literally cost them the war.
It's certainly possible. It changes how you view that whole era.
Well, for everyone listening, that is your challenge for the week. Go look up the Tet King Sand story yourself. Or, if you're really nerdy and want to dig deep, try to find the praise poems written about the Battle of Chek.
Oh, those are great.
Yes, some of them are actually from the Portuguese perspective, which is fascinating to see the enemy's genuine respect for his tactics.
And seriously, go visit Cheung Chau. But when you go, don't just buy a mango mochi and leave on the next ferry. Look for the ghosts.
Exactly. I promise you will never look at a pirate cave the same way again. Thanks for listening to this deep dive.
See you next time.